A Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, Chapter 5, Part 1. Hannah hung her slacks and sweater on a hanger and reached out to catch Moish before he disappeared into the still warm interior of the dryer. No, you don't. Dryers eat cats, and I think you're already on your 9th life. With Moish tucked under one arm, she folded a towel, one-handed, and carried it out to the couch. The moment she set it down, Moish jumped on the top and started to purr. "What's a little cat hair between friends?" Hannah asked, reaching down to scratch him under the chin before she went back to retrieve the rest of her clothes. 5 minutes later, she was dressed and ready for the mayor's fundraiser at the community center. "I've got to go, Moish." Hannah stopped at the couch to say goodbye to him. "I'll turn on the TV for you. Do you want A&E or Animal Planet?" Moish flicked his tail, and Hannah understood. "Okay, I'll put on A&E. Emergency Vet is on Animal Planet tonight, and you don't like to watch that." She had just flicked on the television when the phone rang. Hannah exchanged a glance with Moish. "I'd better not answer that. It's probably Mother again." Hannah listened as her outgoing message played. "Hello, this is Hannah. I can't answer the phone right now, but if you leave a message, I'll be glad to call you back. Wait for the beep." The beep sounded, and then her mother's voice came through the speaker. "Where are you, Hannah? I've called 6 times already and you're never home. Call me the minute you step in the door. It's important." "Would you say that Mother sounds a little miffed?" Hannah grinned down at Moish. His ears were laid back flat against his skull, and he'd puffed up in anger at the sound of her mother's voice. She smoothed down his ruffled fur and gave him another scratch. "Don't worry, Moish. She won't come over here. She just replaced the last pair of pantyhose that you shredded." A rumble came from Moish's throat, a deep, self-satisfied purr. He was definitely proud of himself for chasing away the woman he'd labeled as the bad guy. Hannah laughed and fetched him a couple of salmon-flavored kitty treats from the kitchen, and then she rushed out the door. She had a stop to make before she could go to the mayor's fundraiser, and she was running late. Hannah gave thanks for Lisa once again as she started her Suburban, put it into reverse, and backed out of her parking spot. A neighbor was staying with her father tonight, and Lisa had offered to cart the cookies and coffee urns to the community center for her. By the time Hannah arrived, the refreshment table would be set up, and all she had to do would be to smile and serve. Night had fallen, and Hannah switched on her headlights. Once she exited the complex, she turned south on Old Lake Road and took the country road that led to the Hanks' place. She'd promised Bill that she'd talk to Joanne tonight to see if the lipstick was the one that she carried. Joanne had finished her shift at the cafe at 6, and she would be home by now. Birch trees lined the sides of County Road 12, their white bark catching in the beams of Hannah's headlights as she drove. The Sioux had used birch bark to make canoes. When Hannah was still in grade school, her class had taken a trip to the museum to see one. Young Hannah had decided that if the Indians had built canoes so many years ago, it should be even easier to do using modern tools. Unfortunately, her mother had spotted the barkless patches on the stand of the birch in their backyard. Her canoe hadn't gotten past the planning stage before Hannah had received the scolding of her life from Dolores for attempting to kill her birch trees, accompanied by a spanking from her father for pilfering his best pocket knife. Hannah's lights caught the metal reflective triangle that was nailed to a tree trunk at the mouth of Bailey Road, and she slowed to take the turn. Bailey Road was gravel because it provided access to only 3 homes. Freddie Sawyer still lived in his mother's cottage at the edge of the puddle they call Lake Bailey. He was mildly disabled, but Freddie did just fine living by himself and doing odd jobs for the people in town. The second house on Bailey Road had been finished only last year. Otis Cox and his wife had built their retirement home on the site of his parents' old cottage. They told everyone in town that they liked the quiet and solitude, but Hannah figured it had more to do with the Lake Eden Statute that limited dog owners to 3 canines per residence. Otis and Eleanor were crazy about dogs, and now that they lived outside the town limits, they could take in as many strays as they wanted. Hannah grinned as she drove past the cozy 3-bedroom house. Otis and Eleanor's matching Explorers were in the driveway, each sporting a new bumper sticker. They were rip-offs of the old I Love New York stickers. They read, "I spayed my dog." The only other residence on Bailey Road, way down at the end, where the snowplows had no room to turn around, was the old Hanks place. Ned Hanks, Luann's father, had recently died of liver disease, the result of his years of alcohol abuse. Now that Ned was gone, the only occupants of the Hanks place were Luann, her mother, and Luann's baby daughter, Susie. As she pulled up in the front of the 4-room cabin, Hannah thought about Luann's strange reaction to Bill. He'd told Hannah that he'd stopped Luann once for a broken tail light on the old car she drove, and she'd seemed positively terrified of him. Hannah didn't understand that at all. Bill was a giant teddy bear with his easy smile and his non-threatening manner. He didn't have a mean bone in his body, and everyone in Lake Eden knew it. Hannah really didn't know Luann that well. She'd met her a couple of times when Michelle had brought her home from school, and she'd seen her at the cafe, but they hadn't exchanged more than a few polite words. All the same, Hannah admired her. Even though Luann had dropped out of high school in her senior year, she'd continued to study throughout her pregnancy, and she'd passed the equivalent test for her diploma. Luann was a hard worker at the cafe, always pleasant and neatly groomed, and now that her father was dead, she was the sole support of her mother and Susie. Though there were rumors, no one really knew who had fathered Luann's baby. Anyone who'd had the gall to ask Luann directly had received a perfectly polite, "I'd rather not say." Naturally, Hannah had brought cookies. She'd packed up a bag with a dozen of her old-fashioned sugar cookies, and she grabbed it as she got out of her Suburban. There was a mouth-watering aroma in the crisp night air, and Hannah sniffed appreciatively. Someone was cooking supper, and it smelled like fried ham and biscuits. Luann was clearly surprised to see Hannah when she answered the knock at the door. "Hannah, what are you doing way out here?" "I need to talk to you, Luann." Hannah handed her the cookie bag. "I brought some old-fashioned sugar cookies for Susie." Luann's eyes narrowed perceptibly, and Hannah didn't blame her.